In this episode of Pop Culture Weekly, it's all about the brand new Hulu series Class of '09. I talk with Kate Mara, Joe Robert Cole, Tom Robb Smith, Brian J. Smith, Sepideh, Moafi, and more. Let's go!
Welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon from iHeartRadio. Your pop culture news, views, reviews, and celebrity interviews on all the movies, TV, music, and pop culture you crave weekly. Here's Kyle McMahon.
Hello, and welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon. I, of course, am Kyle McMahon, and thank you for joining me on our crazy ride. It's always fun, isn't it? I know you guys have been so active on, sending me messages and tweets and Facebook messages and all that. And I've got to be better about sharing my socials because I always talk about my socials and then never share them. And then I get in trouble if we're not sharing my socials. So you can always follow me on KMac Music at Twitter and Instagram. I'm less active now on Twitter. I used to be really active, but, it's died in the last couple of weeks. But anyway, I'm super active on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. On Facebook and YouTube, just find Real Kyle McMahon. It's me. There's normally a check mark or whatever that tells you that it's the real Kyle McMahon. In any event, today I have an awesome show. It's all about the brand new limited series on Hulu, Class of '09. It's on Hulu. So it's really cool because it's like kind of a time-jumping series. It's a suspense thriller, and it follows a class of FBI agents from '09. And then it follows them through like three distinct points in time. And, obviously in those 30-ish years, 20-ish years, I'm bad at math, there's different approaches. The world has changed, society has changed, technology has changed. It's so quick how, society changes so quick. Technology changes even quicker. So it's a really, really great series, and I love it. It interweaves the different timelines, and it's just, I think, a really smart series. Well worth your time. So I talk with the cast and the filmmakers about it. I talk with Kate Mara, who stars as Poet, and she's like one of the, most successful agents, undercover agents of all time. I talk with Sepideh Moafi, who plays Our, Brian J. Smith, who plays Lennox. And I also talk with the creator, writer, executive producer, directors, Tom Robb Smith, Jessica Levin, and Joe Robert Cole, who I just want to point out, Joe Robert Cole is a filmmaker, actor. He did, and actually was Emmy Award nominated for his work in American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. Simpson. He also co-wrote Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. I'm a huge fan of his. He is freaking awesome. And so I talked to him about this series. Jessica Levin is executive producer, whose work includes True Detective, His Dark Materials, Vinyl, love that show. Really, some interesting series, and she does it again with Class of '09. And then creator Tom Robb Smith, who you may know from his first novel, Child 44, which was like a huge, crime novel, won a whole bunch of awards. He was the EP and writer for season 2 of American Crime Story, titled The Assassination of Gianni Versace, which was really good as well. So he created Class of '09, and I talked to him about that as well. So let's get into our interviews. First up, Tom Robb Smith, Jessica Levin, and Joe Robert Cole. I love Class of '09. It is really edge of your seat. It's thought-provoking. I'm absolutely love it. Tom, if I could start with you as the creator, how did this come to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've credited, and I think it's fair to credit a real FBI agent who's retired. She's called Jerry Williams, and she she started a podcast, and I stumbled across it when I was living in LA, and I was going these long walks, and they're really detailed. They're like an hour and a half. She's interviewing different retired agents. And the thing that struck me, when I went in, I was kind of hoping to stumble across a crime or some interesting criminal element that I hadn't heard of before. And what I came away with was how interesting these agents were, like as people, completely contrasting with each other, really very different way, not just in terms of their experience in the bureau, but the way they spoke about cases, the way they interacted with Jerry, the way some of them were extremely proud of their work. Some of them felt they should have achieved more, the frustrations. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great to do a show which really centered the agents and their character at the heart of it, rather than the criminality. So, it was always about the characters and not the crimes, I think. And people going into institutions wanting to change it. And that was the central, the spark that started it as a piece.
I love that. And Joe, Robert, for you, did you see, it's kind of interesting that this is coming out now, particularly with all of the very, very, it seems, quick technology changing before our lives right at this very moment, more so than probably normal. For you, was it easy to kind of see how that changes, over multiple decades versus as you're doing the show, how it's quick it's going now?
I don't know that we thought it would be going so fast. Tom has spoken about this. There was a time when the future was going to be like 20 years in the show in advance, and we ultimately, the decision was made to pull it back to make it 10. And he was just mentioning that probably was still too far, right? And so I think when we were shooting it, we knew this is something that's coming down the road and that's relevant, and that technology exponentially develops faster and faster. Talking to scientists and talking to people in general, you find that kind of stuff out. You kind of know that that's happening. But I think it's a bit fortuitous for us that it's the show is landing at this time when it is really in the zeitgeist in a way that I don't think any of us, foresaw necessarily. So we're going to ride the wave with it.
And Jessica, for you, are you, as this has all unfolded, for me as a viewer, I am like I said, it's on the edge of your seat for me the entire time. It's so well written, so well developed and conceived and filmed. Were you able to, did you have to go like page by page as this is developing? In other words, for me, I feel like I'd have to focus on, one timeline, then another timeline. Like, how are you able to kind of meld all this together as the piece is coming?
Yeah, it's a great question. And how we looked at it, particularly in the editing, was largely sticking to Tom's script, but also finding in the performances and in the execution of the shooting, kind of moments that, like, the goal of the piece has always been that the timelines are in dialogue with one another. So what's happening in the past has a direct, or an indirect a sort of thread to what we see playing out in the present or in the future, and that there's always that kind of dialogue between them. But really finding that in the execution of the material takes a certain finesse. So whether it's a line of dialogue or a look or an action, just weaving those three threads together, generally sticking to how it was written, but often finding kind of unexpected gifts in the material that was like, ooh, we could actually thread it slightly differently or in a slightly different order that'll give it a little more punch. So I would say that's one of the real pleasures of the piece, is this kind of fantastic puzzle box that comes from the script, but then evolves over the course of the shoot into the edit.
Yeah, and it was done masterfully. Tom, I've got to ask you, how did you keep track of all of that? Like, did you have like a continuity editor? Did you have charts, or like what? How did you do this?
I mean, Quantico kind of struck, we all know that was one of the things that was kind of nice about it is that Quantico has it's like a very familiar structure, it's like college, and then it were grouped each by the training units. And then it was thinking in really like how to get those units to speak to the other stories. But you always had this bedrock of Quantico, which starts at the beginning and arriving and ends with graduation. I think one of the things that was really interesting is you can write a connection. I mean, Jessica mentioned this. You can write this scene that's talking to another scene. And then when you watch it visually, they might not speak in the same way that you thought. And then in the editing, you can find another moment which just visually or some chemistry, it's almost hard to explain, just really speaks to a different scene differently. And then you're kind of matching it up. Because one of the things I think was so important was that for these timelines, it's not a gimmick. It's not something we're throwing out there to be clever. We're really interested. We think, even going back to Jerry's podcast, those agents were always talking about why they joined, what they achieved, and where the bureau is now. So those conversations had 3 timelines in them. And so in this show, we're trying to make that flow. It was trying to capture that essence of these 3 things: the dream of your career, the career as you turned out, and then the bureau as it ended up, and trying to make that flow very naturally. It was always meant to kind of feel, I think, at the heart of the piece rather than a kind of edifice that we stuck onto it.
I love that. And Joe Robert, for you, this is kind of more of a esoteric, I guess, type of question. But, watching the series makes me kind of think, I think naturally that, and maybe this was intended, but, our past directly affects our future. And one decision that I make today could, or is influencing what will happen to me tomorrow or next year or 10 years from now. Is there a moment for you in your own life where you have kind of recognized that potentially super life-changing thing?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'll start by saying I fundamentally believe that we do not live in a vacuum. In other words, what happened before us affects directly what happens to us now, and what happens and what we do now directly affects what happens in the future. That's on an individual level, that's on a societal level, that's on a global level. As you think about some of the challenges we have in the world and the importance of what we do while we're here, and the relevance of what has happened before us. So that's philosophically something that I believe in just as a person, as an individual. Specifically, I think there are countless decisions that I've made in my life that have gotten me to where I am as a person. Choices, mistakes, many of them mistakes, many stumbles that have led me to the place that I am. I don't know. Deciding, that here's one that was random. When I was going to before I went to college, I worked out at a gym, and I was the first person in my family to go to college, and so I worked out at this gym, and I didn't know anything about what good schools were. What a good school was. I applied to all these different schools because my college counselor at my high school said, you have great grades and you should apply. I was clueless. And a guy in the gym that I knew from when had lived in LA when I was younger, who was just a nice guy, he goes, if you ever get into Berkeley, you should go. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know what Berkeley meant. Like, I was like, oh, that's cool. So I got into Berkeley and I was like, well, that guy said I should go to Berkeley. I guess I should go. That's how it wasn't like it wasn't some like, oh, I've been planning to do this my whole life and this is my dream. It was as random as, this is a really nice guy. He's a good dude. He's a smart guy. And I know where else to go. So like that choice, I could have chosen to go somewhere else. Would my life been different? I don't know. But that's an interesting, like a random choice that ended up being very pivotal in who I've
Joe really very rarely gives out private information, so this is a very special interview.
Oh, thank you.
Man, I know. You got like a real that's pretty good. That's pretty good. He got me there.
Well, thank you all. I can't wait for everybody to see this series on FX on Hulu. I am out of time. Thank you all. Have a great day, and I really appreciate all your time.
Thank you.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
Tom Robb Smith, Jessica Levin, and Joe Robert Cole. Makes you want to watch the series, doesn't it? I'm telling you, it's a really great series. Very edge of your seat. It's also, like I said, very smart in how they do it. So I really appreciate that. All right, let's take a break. Then we're going to get into our interviews with the cast of Class of '09 when we come back. Thank you for allowing us to pay the bills. I'm excited for our conversation with the cast of Class of '09 on FX on Hulu, exclusively on Hulu. I love Hulu. We're going to talk with Kate Mara, Sepideh Moafi, and Brian J. Smith. Kate Mara, if you don't know for some reason, I first watched her in Urban Legends Bloody Mary, which was a sequel to the Urban Legends film. I'm a huge, horror fan. And then she was in Brokeback Mountain, We Are Marshall, Fantastic Four in 2015 as Sue Storm, a.k.a. Invisible Woman. The Martian, Megan Levy. That's just on the film side. On the television side, she was in Nip Tuck, Jack and Bobby. She played Sherry Rothenberg on 24, which I'm a huge 24 fan. She was on Entourage, American Horror Story, Murder House, season 1, House of Cards, which she was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series. And she's coming up in Black Mirror. But we are talking about the series that came out today, Class of '09. So I'm really excited to talk to her and Sepideh Moafi and Brian J. Smith, who you know from Netflix's Sense8. Oh, and the Stargate universe. He plays Lieutenant Matt Scott. In any event, let's get into that interview. Brian J. Smith, Sepideh Moafi, and Kate Mara. So the series is awesome. It's very intelligent, edge of your seat, really, really well done. So kudos to all of you for that. I'll start with you, Kate, if it's all right. How were you able to, with everything going on, how were you able to kind of as an actor keep the timelines, the different spaces in the character's life separate for that particular shoot, if you know what I'm saying?
Well, definitely a team effort. There's so many elements that go into each timeline, and depending on which timeline we're in, it takes a certain amount of prep. So for the future stuff specifically, we're in the hair and makeup chair for a lot longer, even a few hours at times, and so definitely took advantage of those, that sort of downtime for us, not for the hair and makeup teams, but really being able to prep for whatever scenes you're doing, because sometimes we would do different timelines in one day, which was definitely challenging. Yeah. But again, everyone, the crew was so helpful in that. And we really relied on each other to, keep each other in the correct world and the correct emotional state as well.
And Sepideh, for you, I feel like that would be really kind of, this is probably the wrong word to say, but juicy to play, to be able to get a chance to play a character in, different periods. Is that how you feel, or am I off there?
No, 100%. It's an education, right? Because you have to kind of get into the mind, heart, body of your character, and then see what traits, what aspects of their lives and who they are, their being, how that develops based on what they go through in their lives. So it's something that I can't I can't begin to, I can imagine 10, 20 years in the future, but I know that anything I would have imagined for myself into, like, I was an opera singer in 2009. You know what I mean? I had no affiliation or relationship to film and television. And now we're talking about the show. So you just have no idea where your life is going to go, and being able to play with that idea and play with somebody's past and what makes them who they are in the present, and then what ultimately, you know, happens in order to have them arrive at a certain place in the future. It's a fascinating sort of human exploration and contemplation that we don't get the opportunity to do very often in our lives and careers, especially over 8 hours on show. So
I love that. And Brian, for you, you know, you play Lennox, this kind of old money sort of guy, I guess you could say. Is it fun for you, or you know, this is similar to my question to Seppi, is it fun and challenging and rewarding for you to kind of see the evolution of a character, which is also, you know, something we don't often get to see? You know, in a series, maybe we get to see a few years over 8, 9 seasons in real life. This is a bit different. How is that for you?
Yeah, it's great. I remember really early on having a conversation with Tom Robb Smith, our writer and creator, and him saying that this is basically a show about time and about the way that you know, our lives, you know, you can find yourself all of a sudden looking around and going, how the hell did I get here? And you can always trace those decisions back to this person you were with that was like in their 20s. That made all these very adult decisions, maybe before they had all the information. And here you are in midlife, dealing still with the ramifications of those decisions you made when you were still essentially a child, in a way. So that's been a really interesting thing to relate to in telling the story.
And for you, Kate, now I'm actually going to, don't typically do this, but I'd like to ask all three of you the same question. And that is, was there something in your life which you were able to say seemed trivial or whatever at the time, but you now see had a profound effect on your life?
Does anyone have an answer to that question?
I will say I took some really big risks when I was younger, and I was making a lot of decisions about what I wanted to do with my life. And I got to say, like, those things those were the decisions that have had the most impact on my life. And they're the decisions that I look back on my younger self, and I'm like really proud that I had this sort of the guts and the wherewithal at that point in my life to really take a leap of faith. And you lose that a little bit as you get older. So maybe maybe not a trivial decision, but sometimes those bigger decisions you make, you might be spot on when you're that age.
It's hard to remember the trivial stuff because you know what I mean? For me anyway, I remember the big decisions, you know, and like Brian, when I was in my early 20s, well, even when I was an early teen, when I was 14, I was already making huge decisions about what I wanted to do with my career. And I was acting when I was 14. And I do actually feel very lucky that I knew then that I wanted to do that so badly, because I still to this day feel the same way. And that just feels like a real blessing, you know, that I went for it so hardcore when I was a kid. You know, and still today I'm able to do it, which feels so lucky.
And Seppi, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to point out that similarly, you know, to what you were saying in what we were talking about before, 10 years ago, you were in a totally different place. So at some point there was a decision that you made, whether it seemed small or huge at the time, that now we're here talking about the series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if trivial would be the way that I'd characterize the decision, but it was definitely impulsive, where I started working as an opera singer after graduating, and as an artist, acting, singing, dancing, whatever, you don't ever stop training. The process of like, okay, now I'm done. It's never done. And so I was still taking voice lessons. But I was intrigued and I was sort of hypnotized by the freedom of acting without having to worry about singing or delivering a high C or something like that. And so I went into a straight acting class, and the one thing goes after another. And then I fell in love with Shakespeare, and then my love for Shakespeare outgrew I outgrew my love for opera. So one thing leads to another, and you never know how it's going to play out. But yes, certainly these smaller decisions, you don't realize that they can have huge consequences or effects on your life. And that one decision changed the course of my career and life completely.
I love that. And, I hope to get to talk to all of you in 10 years on the projects that you're working on in 10 years and say, hey, remember that convo?
Yeah.
Thank you. Smile. Thank you all so much for your time. I can't wait for everybody to see Class of 09 on FX on Hulu. Thanks, guys. Kate Mara, Sepideh, Moafi, and Brian J. Smith. I'm telling you, you know me. You know the things that I like. I really enjoyed this limited series. It is edge of your seat. It's smart, twisty, turny, and like I said, in the interviews, I would have needed, if I was like, an EP or directing this or even acting in it, I'd need a freaking chart to keep all this stuff on track in my mind. In any event, thank you for joining me for Pop Culture Weekly. Follow me on social, review. It really, really helps if you review the episode or review the show on Apple Podcasts. It helps us to continue to grow every week, and that's what we're doing because of you. I love you for that. And I love you for just hanging out with me every week anyway, and, hitting me up on the socials. So there's a very special episode coming out very, very soon, and it features Jane Fonda. Okay, and Candice Bergen, and Mary Steenburgen. And it's all about book club, the next chapter. I'm going to New York to the premiere, and it's going to be an amazing time. I have sit-downs with the ladies and the filmmakers, and it is going to be awesome. I can't wait for you to hear it. All right, I love you. See you next time. We out.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Weekly. Hear all the latest at popcultureweekly.com.
Clash of 09, Clash of 09, future time, Clash of 09, Clash of 09, go to the future, go to the future.